Call the homeless task force meeting to order. And Colette, since you had a long journey back to Sonora, I'll have you lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The mics are on if people want to use them. And I want to thank everybody for coming out on such a cold and potentially stormy night, although I'm not sure. It's not raining, it's not snowing now, so hopefully it stays that way. Roll call.
Commissioner Lambert,
Here.
Peacock,
Here.
Hawkins,
Here.
Garaventa,
Here.
Wright,
Here.
Rambob is absent at this point, and such.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Report on the agenda posting.
Posted at noon on 16th February.
Approval of agenda. Anyone have any additions, subtractions, multiplications, divisions? No. Public forum. So, public forum, the public may address the task force on any item of public interest not otherwise on the agenda that is within the jurisdiction of the task force. No action may be taken. Matters to be addressed may be referred to city staff or placed on the subsequent meeting agenda. Speakers are limited to a 5-minute presentation. Is there anyone that would like to speak on any item that's not on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we go to item E, and that is unfinished business. Unfinished business is update regarding downtown merchant homeless issues, and that's for Mary Ann Wright.
And I might just preface this, we did have, read into the record was a written report from Member Wright, but thought we might put this back on there to just give her the opportunity to fill in any additional information as part of the public comment, so.
Do we have that written report?
It was read by Jim at the last meeting.
Oh, read. Okay, it wasn't sent out.
Yeah, no.
Could we get a copy somehow?
It was her email, so I can send
Will
it
you
to
send me
you.
an
You
email?
know, and I think I just kind of added more comments. It was kind of hard to get a lot of comments when you would go to stores, the owners wouldn't be there, or, you know, it wouldn't be open. And so I've been talking to people on our merchant association, Facebook. So I've just written down just different comments, just so you can have a general feeling of what people are thinking, so that when we come forward with a plan, that we can consider what the merchants are feeling.
Well, I know that Mr. Smith was here, not last time, but the time before.
Okay.
And stood in your behalf and
Okay.
talked about that they had had a little meeting. And he went through a number of items that they had talked
Oh,
about.
good.
So I didn't know if that was combined with that. If
Yeah, I
we
don't
could get a written
know.
report, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Well, I do have that, if you get YouTube, I have that put on this video. Which is going to be YouTube one.
I don't
Sorry.
even have a computer.
I don't either.
No, I don't have a cell phone.
Oh my goodness,
I live,
you do just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but yeah, I do have an email.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, so this is very informal. I just listed them by number when I spoke to people, and if the comment was similar, I didn't add it again to be redundant. A couple merchants asked where the shelter would be placed, and if it would only be placed in downtown Sonora. Some, when I asked their feelings or complaints or issues, they're still saying that there's been some men talking to customers, but not, and yelling downtown, not sure if they're homeless or if they're transients. A merchant near Coppell Park stated that there has been some incidents where people are yelled at on their way to the bathroom. These are just comments. Most of the merchants mentioned they are glad that the homeless will be helped when it's cold. You know, putting themselves in that situation, many were, you know, hoping something would happen. Several merchants stated that this is a tourist town and people struggle with business, and hope that the task force will take into consideration the placement of the shelter to not be directly in downtown. Some merchants state that the few homeless in town are quiet and to be careful not to draw problem transients into the area. One merchant feels we have had less of a problem with loitering recently. A few merchants stated we need to be careful not to keep increasing services in downtown if it's encouraging homeless from the valley to move here. Several merchants stated they are not mean or unwilling to help, and one was defensive against some letters to the editor, as if some of the merchants are being misunderstood. A merchant on Stockton Street, though, said that the same men walk miles back and forth and he feels they're capable of working. Just recently, a restaurant owner stated that she's had some comments from out-of-town clients mentioning that they've seen increased homeless or transients in downtown Sonora. And then just today, a comment or a suggestion that in Southern California, Lowe's and Home Depot have been setting up, this wouldn't be the shelter per se, but an area where men can check in and you can go and pick them up and do day labor, and thought that would be really a positive way to address other than just the homelessness. And so my personal feeling is that I've restored or built 13 homes in Sonora, and refurbishing old homes. And California has a lot of strict codes and rules, and I feel like our inspectors and our officials here are like a lot easier than in the valley, but their hands are really tied because of the state level. So I went to a builders meeting last week and talked to developers and contractors just to get an idea of where the problem is, and they really feel that because the middle income, it's more difficult to build a house, that they are renting the lower income rentals. And I'm sure all of you realize this, but this more falls into ACA, is that to hopefully lobby at the state level, that's what they have been sending people to the state level, to help with the smaller homes, to decrease some of the codes and restrictions, because 95% of the environmental rules for like energy is very easy to capture, but this last 5% is so difficult to capture, that 5% of energy, that it's raised the cost of the building so much that even then someone could just leave the door open, and all of that money that could have made a house more affordable it really doesn't make any sense. So even though people think they're helping by lobbying for safer homes or saving energy, they're actually making it more difficult for an entry-level home to be built. And so they gave me a printout of what it costs to just an average house to build, and then how the number of permits have gone down so much in years just because of that. So I kind of would like to see us moving someday in direction, not that it's our job, but what is causing the homelessness, rather than just trying to, be a safety net. So.
Thank you. May I ask a question? I can't remember how I'm supposed to do this. What is the square footage of an average house? I'm just curious.
I hadn't asked, this was John Ferriani, he's a friend of mine,
Yeah.
that's a contractor, but I didn't ask him to do this, he just happened to have it with him that morning, and this one was based on a 2,000 square foot home. So this is a middle to upper income, home. But still, he said for, say, a 1,200 square foot home, which would be like, that was the home we were raised in as kids in Sonora, it was 3-bedroom, 1 bath, 5 people living in it, would still affect that small home.
Questions?
No, I think that's good. I just wanted to get that other group together and then really look at what some of the, because maybe things are improving. Maybe there has been some movement on not only the community side, but the homeless folks' side, or those that are causing the problems, knowing that it's being looked at more I don't know how the Sonora Police Department has played a role in being out there or watching or being on it a little bit there. I don't know. I know the citation thing makes it a little different for people too. So I would be very curious to see how this group can address some of those issues that was originally established for the merchants, now that we've heard some, and see what we could do with that, because I think the other part is a whole separate section of what this homeless task force is about.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, unfortunately, we could ask one of our officers, but he just stepped out of the room. Perhaps our city administrator has an idea if there's been any changes to what the police have been doing regarding either enforcement or patrols or
Not anything in particular I can address. I don't think there's been a big change, but certainly we respond to complaints where anyone is interfering with business operations. They respond to calls for service when a business owner does not want someone in their place of business and they've been asked to leave and they don't leave, which is a trespass issue. They are starting a program to enforce the illegal camping ordinance on a somewhat limited basis, but that's a council ordinance been adopted. So, and I think people are just more cognizant of the issue. But given the resources that we have, I don't know if there's been a huge increase. I wouldn't say there's been a huge increase in our enforcement activities with regard to homeless. But people are more aware of what they can do to get, where they can make a call for service and how to deal with the issues that come up.
Since he stepped back in the room, did you want to ask him that?
Well, yeah, but I was going to say one more thing to Mary Ann. Have they talked, have the merchants group, that little group, have they talked about ways that they know, like more lighting, you know, something like that, I thought one of the Sonora police mentioned that some time ago, of some ways that the merchants themselves could kind of make some improvements in their way to somewhat prevent that, number one. Number two, I've noticed in the paper, you know, you always read the record, and it's never homeless are doing this, it's transients. And so when Mr. Schmidt was here last time, he had some very good points of what, and it was wonderful first time really hearing the issues. And that's why I'm really glad to hear this tonight, so we can get moving and find out who we could have help with this or whatever we could get going, get that part of things at least moving instead of constantly just talking about it.
Right. Yeah, Connie Williams had talked to me about Cervantes, about getting the lighting, because you can see where at one time it had lighting under the awning and right over the doorway. So when I have it wired, I'm going to do that. You know, it kind of didn't even occur to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I looked up and I thought, yeah, but no one's going to want to be there with the light blaring on them at night, you know.
Or lights blinking when they stand in the doorway.
Oh, yeah, like
Noise.
yeah, a motion light or
Yeah,
something.
motion detector.
Yeah.
So while you stepped out, Officer Hankins, Kathy had a question about, well, why don't you go ahead and...
Well, I think I was just kind of saying that I had not been hearing so much harsh complaints. And I didn't know if that was more that people are more aware of things that are, for the homeless themselves or the people behaving badly themselves are aware that more is being watched. If the merchants were helping at all, and if the Sonora Police Department was doing anything with more patrolling at night or whatever, that maybe, or even in the day, because from my understanding from Mr. Schmidt was it didn't sound like it was just nighttime stuff. It was also daytime stuff, and I didn't know if there was more involvement or more presence, I guess I should ask.
I can say on my side of the week, I'm sorry. So I work every other Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I would say on my side of the week, it seems to have gone down. I don't know if it's just because it's winter time. It's usually slower in the winter overall anyway, weather related. It's just hard to say. Most of my calls for service, I think, transit related lately have been more on Stockton Street instead of Washington Street.
But there's nothing that's been implemented or some change of policy or, you know, patrolling?
I could say, just me personally, I've gone from night shift to day shift, so I've had more interaction with a lot of the homeless and transients. A lot of times I'll stop and just talk with them, and do some education and tell them, you know, a good way to act, a good way not to act, where you can hang out, you know. Kind of education helps a little bit.
But doesn't that sort of parallel what Sonora, the sheriff's department did down in Jamestown, that gaining a rapport with them a little bit more, and so they relaxed on the challenging activities that were causing problems?
That helps. I don't know exactly what they were doing, but it definitely helps when you build a rapport with them. They trust you a little bit more. Just willing to listen to what else they can do to better themselves or not bother others.
Unless is there any other questions since he's up here for the officer?
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions for merchants? Have you talked with any of the merchants at all in suggesting some ways that they could maybe improve their side of the issue?
We have a community engagement team that the chief put together. I think we have another meeting coming up soon. Those are kind of ways we're discussing different ways we can go about, you know, trying to come up with something that we can put out for merchants.
And how are they feeling about that, the merchants? Since this is all about
The ones that have shown up at the meeting, we've had some positive input from other service providers that have been there.
Well, it sounds like there's something is shifting a little bit. I don't know if all of the merchants feel that way, or the majority, or even the ones that have been having some struggles with this. I'd certainly like to hear their viewpoint too.
Right.
And Mr. Schmitz, if we could get his viewpoint a little bit from that end of town. I don't know, is he coming here?
He's right there.
Oh, there. Oh, I didn't see anyone, sorry. Boy, my God, I
He's already-
wrong. You watch it. Yeah.
Well, why don't we go ahead and open it to public discussion, see if there's any input on the homeless downtown merchant things. Anyone like to speak on this particular part? From what Marianne said? No one wants to, okay. Interesting.
Well, I could just tell you that working with the homeless at the drop-in center, we've talked to them about when you're panhandling or any of those kind of things are that is not going to help our relationship with the community. So we do try to talk to them about that. We need to be good citizens here too and be respectful of the merchants and that. So I don't know if that's helping either, but we do try to talk to them about our part in this. Work together.
I do have some feedback. My girlfriend's in the back, and she's going to start laughing here in a second. But, in the last month, and this is one of those things, you always wear your surroundings, you always keep your eye out. But so far in the past month, I've had interaction with, I would say, 4 transients. I've got an acre of land. I live between here and Grocery Outlet, so I'm on the route, essentially. And I've got an acre of land and then the cemetery behind me. And recently, 2 came up the hill, looked over on the property, realized I was watching, and boom, they were gone. So I think what you're doing is working, because they had, one of them had what appeared to be a new tent, and the other had what appeared to be a new sleeping bag. So I don't know the whole story, not concerned about it. The other 2, I couldn't figure out who in the world they were or where they came from. They were walking a dog, 2 ladies, but they were obvious transients. And I had to go out and tell them to leave because they were letting the dog use the bathroom on the acre of land right by my kids' toys. I'm like, you know, what are you doing? But this is one of those, you know, being aware of your surroundings, knowing what's going on, and being willing to speak up and say something. So I applaud you if this is one of the reasons we're having less issues.
I don't know, but we do try to talk with them about being part of the community rather than against the community or the community against us. Yeah.
But that's what we talked about, I think, in the very beginning, was the idea that the culture of the homeless or transients or whatever needs to have some help and guidance as well. And there needs to be a little bit of changing in their thinking, as well as the merchants or the local people too. I mean, it's not just a one-way street at all, it's a responsibility all the way around, it seems to me.
Any comments on police? One last shot at anyone who wants to talk about the merchant homeless. Did you want to ask him any questions? Let's see if you wanted to-
Myrna.
Oh, Myrna's coming?
Yeah.
Myrna Doring from Jamestown. I'm just wondering, we used to have vagrancy laws and anti-loitering, I believe. And just throwing that out there as a thought. I don't know what loitering would entail. I mean, if they need to come into town for services, but after they get their business done, is there a reason for them to just hang around and cause problems? I don't know. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Sure, please.
And that's a question I could ask either the officer or you, whether it's. Okay. Because the way I've understood it, some of the what used to be loitering laws have been changed because of court.
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, if you're on the public street, you're on the public street. You can sit on a bench all day long if you like, until you create a problem for the public or the business. There are times when people might be encouraged to find another bench, but you can't force them to leave. If it's private property, which some of the businesses have, either by their construction or in the case of the shopping centers that are private property, then they can, if people are occupying those private spaces and they're asked to leave and they don't, then there are enforcement options for that.
But when it comes to public,
When it comes to the public street, it's a public street. Curtis can talk about the legal, more technical legal aspects of that, but generally, if, for anybody, you want to sit out on the bench all day long and enjoy the sunshine and read a book, or just be in clothes that are in disrepair and sit on a bench and, be unsightly, that's still not, it's not an action that's enforceable for anything. There's no offense there. So, it's only when there is some activity that's disruptive, whether to the public or to the businesses, that we can take action in those situations. So, anyway,
does that kind of answer your question, Myrna? Okay. You had,
I had forgot that I had talked to one other person, one other merchant. This was at the very end. It was the Bella Rosa Vineyard or Winery, and she used to do free wine tasting, and she used to have trouble with the same men coming in and doing the free wine tasting, and she was afraid of them, and so she just completely quit. So I thought that was really negative for the public, but she felt that if she said anything negative about the homeless, that it was like she would be frowned upon. And so I feel like everybody being supportive of each other, and that we could say something and not be, shamed for it, and vice versa, that we could, like you say, they have boundaries on their behavior, we can have limitations that we have to not tolerate certain behavior, and that we can all get along if we could come to an agreement. So I encouraged her to start doing that again, and that we would be supportive of her if people were, coming in just to taste the wine and they aren't really wine purchasers.
right.
Yeah.
She didn't feel afraid for herself, because I can understand that part of it, but she felt that she'd be ostracized or something along those
She
lines?
just said, I was really nice to him and I didn't want to say anything, and, and I said, hey, we're here to represent the business community so that we can work this out, not to just quit doing the wine tasting because she was afraid and felt that she wasn't being nice. So,
question about that too.
Mhm.
I think the business people could certainly offer to some, are you aware that there is a drop-in center, a place for you to be?
I did.
Not
yeah.
that we
Oh, I
want
see.
everything there, but we can handle that, and if
Okay.
they're disruptive, then we can have them leave or call the police, but it might be just an offer to them. Are you aware that the drop-in center's open 11 to
Okay.
4, and you could get something to eat there? I mean, maybe that just keeps you from just loitering or hanging around.
Mhm.
That's only the hours we are 11 to 4.
Okay, yeah, well,
That
that's nice that I
emergency
can
feel-
offer that for them to
offer
talk to
that
you
to them.
and, for assistance, that would be great.
For a place to be, because,
Yeah.
we've been there for 19 years, and half the town doesn't even know we exist, so.
Yeah, I visited it, and it looked like a great place to socialize. They were having a nice time. It was clean and very orderly, and I was impressed. So, yeah.
Thought you were gonna start talking.
No, I am.
Okay. Please.
I was waiting to listen, because maybe they would have answered the question. So I know this is out of the city, but at Interfaith, when I am talking to a number of the homeless, just asking them, the ones that are coming up from the city to Interfaith to get some services and stuff like that, how are things going? What is happening? And the most common response is they're hearing this now. They're hearing our concerns, they're showing our dilemma, they're putting in the newspaper, they're educating the community, because not everybody is a bad guy that's homeless. And it's becoming apparent that they are feeling a little more comfortable with the image that's being projected. And I think Alex has been doing that, you know, on some basis of reporting, that all aren't badly behaving. They're being listened to, and their questions are being asked of them and then brought here or whatever. So, I mean, it's even going out that far when they come out. At least there's some movement even in their thinking that someone is finally listening or finally and trying to work on something together rather than always kind of, you know, don't come my way kind of thing. So, but the other thing, yes, if Mr. Schmidt would be available to expound a little bit on what some of the things that you had heard before, and if there was any results from one of the meetings like we had, yeah, anything like that. I just want to get some ideas so we can move on it, or have emergence move on it, or what.
Yeah, right. Like I said before, this is one of the main things Marianne said, is the merchants. It's the basic loitering, panhandling, that kind of thing, and you know, you see them sitting downtown. There's probably some that aren't causing problems, but most of them are doing something, panhandling or waiting for somebody to offer them something. They're just killing time, but that's why they're in a public spot, and that's why we try to keep them off our property, is for that main reason. And I don't know, there's a couple guys out there, Ricky Briggins, that he's gonna always do that, I feel. I don't know that he will never stop panhandling. I don't know what your thoughts, Janet.
I can't think of his last name, but does he have a cane and, or
Pardon me?
Rick? I'm asking you what he looks like. So I know him mostly by first name. Rick? Is that
Yeah,
his-
Ricky
Ricky.
Briggins, he has a walker?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's
Okay.
almost decided it's a way of life
You know,
for
I
him, because I
think,
heard it a lot.
yeah, he's been trespassed from, 80% of the businesses at some point in time. That's another thing I think that we can look at is if somebody is trespassed, is there a way to increase the time on that? Because if I remember right, that's only at 45 days, or what was that? Do you remember what the days are? It's not that long. And then you gotta up it. If I trespass somebody from my property, then it's my responsibility to go to the police department and say, okay, John Doe, I want him to be trespassed again for a longer period of time. Because, and maybe they need to understand it, Janet,
I
You
would
know.
like to know their names. I would like you to even call me at the center
Yeah.
and tell me the names
And
of the ones that are doing that, panhandling and that, because then I'm
The
talking to
gentleman
them
with the
directly.
little dog too, I don't
Oh,
remember.
Matt
his-
White.
Dog, Matt.
Matt B.
You know, he teaches those guys how to panhandle.
Sure.
You know,
And he
and,
has the anger issues as well, and you just have to deal with him, and he's fine if you talk with him.
yeah, well, I'm sure there's mental issues on a lot of their sides, but, you know, as a business, that's what we don't want. The post office, they have big issues, that's why they close at 6 o'clock at night, 6:30 at night now. The lobby's not even open, and they're kicking those guys. Ricky was one just the other day off their property also for the same reasons. And they're just there because of the traffic. You know, if you can get $5 or whatever. So we gotta try to solve those issues. And if the Lambert Center could help with that, that would be great. Or behavioral health or something like that. You know, to keep them going, I guess, or something meaningful. I mean, giving and giving and giving just doesn't seem to work. You know, obviously I know some of them can't physically work anymore. Ricky is one, I'm sure he can't work. But is there a way to convince them or help him to not be that negative out there? That's all.
So, when the sheriff was up at a meeting the other day, he was talking about how they worked it out in Jamestown to some degree. One of the things that he had mentioned, and I believe he had mentioned it to Chief Vanderbilt too, in their staff, is to encourage through the media somehow not to constantly give. Not don't give a bottle of water or something like that, but not constantly have packages ready for them or this and that, because that's how they become used to their way of life. It doesn't make them have to try to do things better to get whatever it is that they're wanting to get. And some of the merchants would give them something just to get them out.
Right, exactly.
And that was not the answer according to the officers.
And that's true, but getting some merchants downtown to do that, just like the lady with the wine tasting, you know, she felt more comfortable just not doing it. I mean, that's what we gotta kind of get away from, is we gotta try to look at the whole town as one, not just one little business, but the whole town, and say, you know, we're not gonna accept this, you know, vandalism or whatever they're doing, panhandling. We're not gonna accept it as a community, so, you know, they're either gonna, you know, adjust, like Janet said, or they're gonna move on somewhere else. One of those two things will probably happen. So, getting more businesses to agree to not hand out sandwiches, not ignore, I think that's the worst one, ignore the bad habit, whatever that may be, for all of us, and maybe that would help, and maybe they would understand.
You don't really need to give them food and that, because they can get that at the center, 5 days a week.
You know, meals all over.
And there's meals every night.
Meals every
So
day.
I think if the merchants would just say, are you aware, and I can even give you cards for the drop-in center, are you aware of the center? And they do furnish food, and to let them know there is a place. It's warm in the winter and it's cool in the summer, and you can be there as long as your behavior's good. But I would like you to encourage them to do that, and I also like to know by name who these people are, because then I personally talk to them and say, we gotta be good with the businesses, and I don't know if that always works, but,
Well, I suggest you two get together and just kind
okay.
of discuss names there.
Yeah, you know,
Really not
it's
good to bring them out.
No, at all.
they, you know, they go in and out of trouble, in and out of jail, and so,
Yeah.
you know, the ones today that might be the problem are not necessarily the ones 2 months from now, so, yeah, that changes quite a bit. And then, like the officer said, the winter time,
Less.
it is less. I think we all realize that. So that's why it's, I don't know, maybe they're, I don't know why it would be. It's not that drastic of a difference, but they are less, probably hang out more at the camps or something. But- So increasing, the policies we have, the no trespassing and the no camping and all that, I think, in a positive way will help.
Well, and then also, I would think that when you do establish a little bit of a rapport, you would be able to help them understand that by this bad behavior, there is going to be consequences, rather than adjusting a little bit and not maybe mouthing off so much or being obviously arrogant in front of stores or anything like that, I mean, I would think that there would be some thinking difference. And I didn't know, Mr. Hankins, if you had ever been to the merchants' meetings and talked about ways that they could help the situation, or?
The chief attends those meetings. The chief
Okay.
does, when he's needed.
Okay.
Right.
And I do have an answer, I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. When you trespass somebody from a business, it's good for 30 days.
Yeah, so there's a way we could help that somehow, I don't know.
That might be.
I'm gonna ask that here in a minute. I'll ask
Okay.
that. Ask that now, as a matter of fact. Can we, is that pretty much a state thing, or?
I don't know. So let me make a suggestion.
Okay.
The theme is we've got certain restrictions, certain regulations. I'll just say, whether they're local ordinances or other statutes. And they include trespassing, camping, and or illegal camping, loitering, panhandling. I would invite the chief to come to the next meeting, and he can review with you what the regulatory framework is that can deal with these issues. And then, if they can be, if the committee wants to see to make changes, make the trespass time more than 30 days if that's possible,
Or higher second offenses.
or whatever it is,
Yeah.
that if that's the direction the committee wants to go, then you might have some suggestions on how you might accomplish that. So let's put that on the next agenda. But
Would that be worth inviting, I would hope, more merchants than just Mr. Schmidt comes?
Well, I think the issues for the merchants were pretty much the same.
I mean, they all heard it,
They all heard, I'm not sure what you
heard
mean.
what some of these statutes or whatever are.
That's fine. I mean, Mary Ann can communicate to them.
I'll relay it
Yeah, I mean,
on
this is
the,
about
on the business
anyway.
Facebook, I will, yeah.
But
Invite them to the next meeting.
we can have that as an agenda item to talk about what the regulatory framework is as of today, and what opportunities there might be to make changes to that, if there's other enforcement tools that might be there.
Okay.
Could I ask Mary Ann a question? The Merchants Association, do they meet monthly, or how often do they meet?
This is on the Business Merchants Facebook page where they relay information back and forth. Say if there's a shoplifter and they start at one end of town, they could, alert people, or if there's some other issue, or.
But you don't have a
We don't
meeting?
have, we have the merchant meeting that that the Sonora Chamber puts on. But as far as communicating through this,
No, I just wondered if
Okay.
I came, because I would like to hear from them too, and see how we can work together. The
then would
merchants.
be the merchant meeting?
Yeah, who sets the agenda? Is that George?
George
George.
does, and then I work with him on
Okay.
finalizing.
The one that's this coming Wednesday is probably already set,
The agenda hasn't gone out, but the topics have been pretty well set.
and I assume we couldn't really add this one to it in this short notice.
Well, I guess we could. I would want to talk to George
Sure,
about it, see what
certainly.
he wants to do.
They're the fourth Wednesdays that are going to, 8 a.m. here. 8 a.m. or 8:30? 8 a.m. here in this area.
Fourth Wednesday,
Fourth Wednesday.
and where do they meet?
Right here in this room.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah,
It would be best to be, able to, I mean, you can come, obviously.
I just, yeah,
But to discuss the topic, you have to be on the agenda.
maybe I just need to listen.
Because believe me, there's usually about 5 or 6 topics, and they don't always get through them all, so. Okay, last chance for anyone to talk about the item E, the downtown merchants homeless issues. Last chance. Okay, we'll go on to then F, new business, continued discussion and possible recommendation regarding a low barrier approach to shelter. And I was hoping by now that Raj and or Tamara were going to be here. I thought they had said they were going to be here.
Well, I think we should go over, I mean, he's our main person for that.
Well, we should, there should be some input of the people that are here, so.
Yeah.
So I think what we'll do is we'll take more discussion from the folks that are here, if you have any, regarding the low barrier approach. And go from there. Does anyone, I think see most of the faces in the crowd, except for you two guys. I think we're not here. I don't recall you being here for the low barrier, but the rest of you I think have.
What's the definition of low barrier?
Low barrier, I think, mostly is that there's no expectation of being completely sober. What they found that most of the larger or the most established shelters have a clean sober policy, and which is fine for them, I suppose, but it leaves a lot of folks out. It's not to say that they're always on something all the time, but if they get busted once they're out of the shelter in these other approaches. The low barrier approach is that you don't necessarily get busted out, but it's also probably not as established a shelter, shall we say. I think, would it be fair to say that most of the low barrier shelters are more camp oriented than they would be building oriented? Is that fair to say?
I thought it was more building.
It's either way.
It's either way?
More,
Okay.
it's more
But
leads
they're
towards
less
building.
structured,
Less, yeah, less.
service oriented.
Have services there.
The certain behavior expectations.
So it's all right to do drugs there?
Yeah.
So you're-
Well, no, it's not, that's not, no,
No,
it's
but
not like
it's
do
it's
drugs.
acceptable.
No, it's,
You could come under the influence, but you can't use.
You just said it
yeah,
was
you can't
acceptable.
use there, if they're under the influence, then they can be.
So somebody's gonna monitor this?
Yeah, there's gonna be like a drug monitor
I
or
believe that there's
alcohol monitor.
24/7.
It had to be 24/7.
Yeah, there's some of there 24/7. The reason why it came up mostly is because they've been finding that this has been more successful.
And an incentive to do better by coming and being accepted there. Eventually, they came without being under the influence, by being accepted. So I would say more successful. That's what
In the long
Ross
run.
proposed.
I know I've done low barrier in another state, and it didn't have so much to do with, it was the behavior as a result of drinking and drugs that was the problem, and we didn't care what they did outside, but they couldn't come in and misbehave
Yeah.
as anybody else could come in and misbehave for whatever reason, whether it was domestic violence or anything else. They would be put in that category that there's rules about behavior inside the shelter. Our shelter was more of a night shelter where you lined up at 5 in the afternoon, you brought your stuff in. It was mainly just for sleeping, and it was, some services would come in the morning, and there was a schedule posted of what community service groups were coming in to meet with folks if they wanted to meet with them. We also had a day labor program there, that when they would leave by 7 in the morning, there would be a van or two from around in the area, and they would take people if they wanted to go to day labor, but then they'd come back at night, but they couldn't leave all their stuff in there, that kind of thing. It wasn't like that. It was probably a half and half of a low barrier and just an overnight place out of the weather kind of thing.
So would this be like tuck sheds?
Well, if you guys, Why don't you come up to the podium
Yeah.
and ask questions? Or state, or have some comments or
All
whatever.
right. Well, my name is Matt Raver. I just moved here from the Bay Area November 1st for a better life for my wife and my daughter and myself. I know what homeless is. I work in Oakland, I work in San Francisco. Contra Costa County is a mess. But I'm listening to what you guys have to say, and I think that everyone has rights. But I am seeing nothing happening in the Bay Area except for kind of more, I guess, mayhem. Tough sheds aren't working in Oakland. One just lit on fire last week. And unfortunately, people with mental health issues are, we've got people who are victimizing those people for their money or whatever, so they can get more drugs. I come from a town called Crockett, small. We have a homeless, we're at a food program, and all it's done is made the town worthless. And I'm sorry to say that, but it's just what it is. The homeless there have, and most of Contra Costa County, they're combative. If you have to tell a grown adult how to act, I really don't see it ever working for them, and that's unfortunate, and I wish it could be a different way. But, I mean, if I got I'm 41. If I got to tell a 50-year-old that he needs to watch himself and not panhandle and things like that, I mean, these are all fundamentals that he should have maybe learned when he was younger. I worry about my family, myself and my family and our rights as taxpayers and as, new citizens to Sonora. I plan on staying here. I love it. I think it's beautiful. People are friendly. And it's the best thing, I've seen since the Bay Area, 'cause I hate the Bay Area. It's just turned, unfortunately, into garbage. It's hypodermic needles all over, and most of the homeless we're seeing now in the Bay Area, and I'm seeing them here, are young drug addicts. They're all on heroin, and unfortunately, they litter and throw their needles everywhere, and they use the restroom wherever they please and make environmental hazards. I talked to the mayor last week about, and I'm not too familiar with the area. I guess it would be, is that Highway 49?
Main Street.
Is that's, yeah, I don't know which direction. So so please excuse me, it's the one past the gym. There's,
Stockton Road.
Stockton Road. So I've been talking with the mayor and I gave her the information. I talked to the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, about their property and about the homeless being there and about maybe turning that into something different. I forgot Connie's last name.
Williams.
Miss Williams. Miss Williams, I gave her all the information and they said we might be able to turn it into a 40-acre dirt bike area instead of a place, for kids, instead of maybe a place for people to stay and hopefully not start fires this summer. And that's what I'm worried about is fire issue. I agree with this gentleman. He said, hey, it's the winter time. These people don't want to be around here. I wouldn't want to be here in the winter. I'd rather be in the Bay Area where it's 25 degrees warmer. But those are my concerns, and I understand that you guys have something to try to help these people, and I believe they need help. But this is a hard topic to talk about. I see you guys are trying to come up with solutions. I just want to listen, and I just want to know maybe what some of the terms are meaning here since I'm new.
Okay. One thing I can encourage you to do is to look at there's the, I guess I put that on Katie Lake's YouTube channel, but I've been filming the meetings, raw video, basically, just unedited. So if you want to go back and look, I can just type in City of Sonora Homeless Task Force. You see what it comes up on YouTube. There's been about 5 or 6 meetings now, at least. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's more than that. And so if you want to go back and see what we've been discussing, you're more than welcome to do that.
Thank you.
So just for some clarification, the low barrier shelter is a concept. There's no location, there's no size, there's no structure that's been defined. But it's a concept that was introduced by one of the other members that works with ACA and has used or been involved in a shelter in another location that was very successful. So And from the city's perspective, it's not something the city's going to be able to do on its own. You know, if there's a recommendation out of this committee, then it's going to take a larger group to make it happen, if that's what the desire is. So, but it's not, beyond just the concept, it's not been defined as to place or size, or even how, whether it's going to be a building or a camp, or what form of a structure it might take, so. Anyway.
Okay. Is there anybody else wants to?
Well, I feel as a businessman that it's, the negatives it's gonna bring, we have to pay attention to those. You know, and you talk, I know the paper, I don't know if the paper's here, but the Democrat has gone out to their camps and stuff and talked to these people, and they gave their viewpoints and stuff, and a few of them have said, hey, that would be a great idea. But, you know, do they fully understand, you know, what that entails, you know, because they got a lot of stuff they got to haul around, and are they going to want to drag it all in and drag it all out? I mean, I'm not even sure they understand what we're talking about. And then I feel like we're talking about something that maybe isn't even possible. I mean, is it even possible? Maybe we should go start there. I mean, financially, physically, land-wise, building-wise, I mean, do we even have a concept of it even being possible? If it's not even possible to do a low barrier shelter, then let's move on. You know, are the funds there? Tim just said it's not a city thing. Us merchants would probably block it, being if it was went inside the city limits. So, you know, dragging more people, a lot of people feel it will drag more people to our community. That's just a perception. But that's reality. Perception is reality, whether it's true or not. So I think that should really be, you know, a lot of people say, well, get the idea and the money will come. Well, I'm not sure that will work. I know some people have mentioned that before, but, and there's been people that have been helped that are homeless, not really transients, but homeless, and the community over the past couple of weeks have helped a couple of people, and have done a lot for them. But as a full-time permanent shelter, yeah, I feel that it's a direction that we don't need to go. I feel we don't have the law, you know, the police force for it, the manpower to take care of the issues that might come up. I could be wrong, but that's my own personal opinion. Thank you.
Any questions for Arthur?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
It's okay. I asked him, I don't see any, unless you had one. Kathy always has a question for you.
No,
Yeah,
I
sure.
mean, kind of, what you're saying about taking in and out, my low barrier shelter was a semi-shelter, in a way. It wasn't a residential kind of a low barrier shelter, what I think Raj was talking about. And I would, for me, I would have to see a lot on paper of a research committee that has looked very seriously at this to see what the real reality of it is. Main example is where's the money coming from? Are the people going to pay for that or what?
Right.
You know, where is it going to be placed? That's already been voiced out here loudly that they don't want it close. They want it with, like, I thought it was, well, maybe it was Tamara that was saying that it needs to be within a mile of services. You know, a radius of services. Well, that's pretty much right downtown. So I think there just needs to be a lot of research before any kind of decision could be made. I mean, factual research, not what we're thinking it should be or could be.
Right.
And see if any other place has done it. I know the one Raj was talking about is closed now. So I don't know if the money ran out or just what happened. So I think really And that's not gonna happen and help things right now. It's gonna be years, a couple of years probably down the road, well, if it even got off to a start. Is the way I would look at it, to make sure, because I certainly wouldn't want to see us invest money in something that's really not, I mean, it'd have to be managed. We'd have to get everybody involved in the community, in the city, and who's gonna manage it, who's gonna run the facility, you know, all of that, liabilities and everything else. So I agree with you, either really look at it as a committee, perhaps, or, and maybe some others from the community would be interested in working on that kind of a committee. I don't know if that's okay or not.
Well, I think it'd be kind of a bit out of our scope as the homeless task force, because we're only looking at the city end of it. And city would be somewhat of a partner in some way, I would assume. But there's a million partners that need to come together, notwithstanding talking with the county, you know.
Absolutely.
County has to be a bigger partner, and you know, and then ATCA as a group would, I would assume, would be a partner. So what we need to do is, from our perspective, see what we can do from a city standpoint, what limited resources we have and what's happening in our area, and just and make that recommendation to the rest of the city council and go from there. I mean, I don't think we could, this is well out of its scope to try to be part of the group that puts the whole shelter together, so.
I mean, I would almost think that ATCA or Raj needs to go to the county just as well. And present that idea, and then however it evolves from there, just.
And I think that's probably, you know, I'm not gonna speak for him, but he should speak for himself because he would know, obviously, but I think he's probably in the process of doing that.
Good.
So, but then, hopefully.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, you know, what is the city wanting to do?
Right.
What's the merchants' take on it? What's the police force take on it? Is it gonna create more man hours for them, or are we gonna have to put on more officers? And then get all that information, because the perception in the paper and what you read around town is like, oh, okay, cool.
It's hard.
Yeah, we can do that, no problem, next week it's gonna open, that's kind of the, so we have to make sure that people understand that it is, you know, a process, and if, you know, the city can only do this much, the police force has this input, the merchants have this input, the county has this input, then it's either really tabled, a go, or dead, you know, they move on to something else.
Not very popular, I don't think. But anyway, I come from this from the humanist point of view. I don't see them as homeless. I see them as our neighbors and human beings we're talking about here tonight. And I think that we could have a twofold solution to this very, very easy. We just need somebody to take charge. And obviously it's not going to be you guys. The county was, when I went to their housing meeting the other night, they were supportive. They were actually very sympathetic. We had two supervisors there, and they want to help, but they don't want to take the lead either. So there's, you know, no one taking the lead, no one calling everyone together to solve the problem. We could do a night shelter, even if it's just a winter shelter, extremely easy, no problem. We just need to find the place, and we need to do it. Get more people involved, get the churches involved. They could bring sack lunches, take turns. There's all kinds of things we could do that could at least work for the winter. I don't think there's anyone in this room that wants to go out and spend the night in the park tonight. You know what? But there's people out there. There's human beings out there. They're not just problems. They're people. We have a day shelter. All we need really is a good winter shelter to get them out of the freezing cold at night for 5 months, 4 months. Then they have the day shelter during the day. We worry about our pets tonight. No one's leaving their pet outside. We don't worry about human beings spending the night outside. So that's what I have to say.
Well, I'll have to say that we have tried many, many, many buildings. We've gone to probably every empty building in this town, and not one of them would rent it to us or give it to us at a reasonable price for a night shelter. If you have a place for it, we'll make it work.
We just have to keep trying, keep asking.
We can keep doing that, but it's a tough thing. We've been trying that for about 2 years to try to find a place.
I have one more thing. Sorry. Just to what I'm hearing, and I'm not good at talking in front of people, but the problem I would have, I'm a property owner, I own multiple properties in the Bay Area, and I'd like to own some here. I would feel really bad for the person who owns the property next to this property. How is that going to affect their bottom line? Because the bottom line is money. We're in a capitalist society. This is just how it is. If you don't like it, there's other places you can go that aren't in a capitalist way. I mean, I do like to protect my interests. That would be something I would worry about is if you're going to put this there, what's going to happen to the next door neighbor? If you really do care about having these people off the streets, and this is what you want to do, bring them into your own home. See how that works for you. If you do find a place that would hopefully be remote enough, maybe close enough to where they can walk to and from to get their food, because they deserve to eat just like anyone else. But how about see it as a science experiment of, once it's all over, how are the surroundings treated? Because if we go to Oakland, the experiment's already started. And if you go through parts of Oakland, you'll see somebody on methamphetamine in an area half the size of this room with all of his belongings strewed across the street where you can't even go through the street. I don't want to see an area, if I owned the property, have that next to my area and go, well, now my property's worthless. Why did I even go to work? So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have a little bit of a response to
Yeah, we could
This
go
is
back.
kind of a debate sort of.
Yeah, this is supposed
Public
to be,
comment and
yeah,
questions.
discussion and possible recommendation toward the shelter is what it really is.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of, unless it's under that kind of guise, I think we kind of need to move on since we're going to discuss it again at the next meeting.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that I'm meeting supervisor tomorrow with Beetle Harbor, talking specifically about housing, affordable housing, what they've tried in the past and what it looks like could happen here. And I would like to get some feedback from them and their standpoint and their viewpoint.
So you're talking about Beetle and who else?
Evan Royce,
Oh, Alec?
their supervisor,
Oh, okay.
yeah, to talk
He
to them.
mentioned he was at a meeting about homeless and I was going to ask him
That's okay.
Thank you.
Myrna, do you have something to say?
Yeah, my thought is, this problem isn't going away. No matter what we do, it's going to be here. So we can either solve it, give these people some place to go, so that they're not downtown loitering or panhandling or doing whatever mischievous thing they want to do. But the problem is here and we have to solve it.
I guess so.
So we're,
Okay, unless there's no other comment, we'll go ahead and keep that on the agenda also to go to the next meeting. And I think we need to start thinking about bringing everything to kind of a recommendation phase. We've been discussing for several meetings, more than 6 meetings, at least 6. And we've gotten a lot of input from different areas, but I think, we need to start looking at, I don't know if this needs to be agendized as a separate item for the next thing, or just at least have the mindset of going toward that.
This will be calendared for discussion and recommendation,
Mhm.
which would let you do that if you were ready to.
The other item of discussion with the police chief, I'll write it in a way that could be a recommendation, consideration of the recommendation as a part of that discussion as well. So that will give you an opportunity to get to that point if you're ready to get to that point.
But would that include seeing that list a little bit to kind of look at what we're talking about and recommending, or what
I don't know what list you mean.
Well, Mary Ann's list.
I think it's, however that can get circulated. If you get it to me, I can get it out to the committee
Just if
members.
you send it out to us, because I think that's what we'd like to talk about, how
This,
a way of
the
those
little
ways.
list of things I had.
How can we address, that's what's being brought to our
Okay.
attention
Yes.
now, and
Okay.
what Mr. Schmidt had also brought, that that's what the merchants are talking about, that how can we address that as the homeless task force in behalf of the merchants? That's
Okay.
what I understood this to be in the first
Yes.
place.
Yes. So I will, I'll have this kind of edited and printed better by Zach at Utilitarians, and so that I can have it run off so it's more legible. And so this is
Provide it to
my-
Tim, is that
And I can
right?
give it to Tim, yeah.
Or next, at the next meeting, the next
Okay.
meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
just maybe.
And make sure there's enough copies for.
Okay. And I really would like to make sure that the merchants are more aware of your services,
Mhm.
because I really feel that what you provide, and if they know that and can go to you, as long as they don't bombard you too much,
Well-
that I think would be a really great relationship for all the merchants downtown.
Well, and there's also the enrichment center.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
You know, I mean, that's the
Mhm.
other end of town, more towards Mr. Schmidt's place, and that's where a lot of them go.
Okay.
There's other places around, and I think that could be something that this group could list for the merchants.
What about a
Where our
packet,
services-
maybe for all the merchants,
Fine.
with all of the services that we could distribute to each merchant downtown?
Fine. Well,
Because a
sometimes-
lot of this I had never heard of until I was
No,
here.
is anyone even doing that?
I'm just to say, a
Sure.
whole bunch of paperwork is just boring and they're
You
not
don't
gonna
think
read
they
it.
would, yeah.
But I think if we gave them our cards or something, that this is available,
Mhm.
hours when they are, and what's
Mhm.
available there. And then we do try to steer them off to other avenues to help
Okay.
them. But basically, it'd be a place instead of hanging around there. hanging
Well, I
around
meant a
drop-in
packet for
center.
the merchants to look at, not
Yeah.
them to give.
There's-
For them to look, so they would know about you, so it's right there, like you'd say homeless task force conclusion packet or something, where we
Okay.
have all of
Yeah,
the
that could be the end
resources.
result.
Resources.
When we're through.
Mhm.
There's also a consortium meeting that we have every quarter
Okay.
that has a lot, all the community services that provide something for
Because a lot of times
someone.
we'll develop a relationship with a
Yeah.
homeless person, and we don't really know what to do
Yeah.
either. Like, where do we send
Send
this
them.
person? Okay.
When's the consortium committee meeting?
The next one is May 9. I think it's the second Wednesday in May. And it's at 9:30, and anybody is welcome. It's at the St. Matthew Lutheran Church, and it's a variety of services, whether it's a little church or a county department or what was it, Jeanette's group, and
Mental
everybody's
health,
there.
all of them are there.
And they talk about what services they have, some of the issues they have, how are we addressing our clients to make it better for access for them, some of these kind of things. It might help some of the merchants have an idea of where other help is available for some of the people they may talk to in the long run. But yeah, anybody's welcome, it's open.
That's out in Joshua, right?
Yep,
Yes.
it's 2 hours time,
Mhm.
9:30, right?
9:30.
Okay, and I guess with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn until our next meeting, which will be March the 8th.